and welcome to Devtoberfest 2024. This is sadly already the last day of Devtoberfest 2024, but we have awesome sessions coming up. And the next session coming up is about wdi5. It's not wdi5, it's wdi5. And I have with me today Volker and Simon. So without further ado, I hand it over to you. Have fun.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. wdi5, double thumbs up. This session will feature Simon mostly, so I'll be only talking briefly, opening things up. Simon is the newest member of the wdi5 steering committee, and he's also done some major upgrade hauling work, but we'll come to this later. Today is also not going to be a session about introduction to wdi5 or how to install and configure it. It's going to cut straight to the chase with some advanced features that you might or might have not seen yet. It's all in the documentation, though, that I want to mention. In case you haven't seen the documentation yet, it's available straight from the GitHub repository. You can navigate to it, and it looks like this. Well, there's not a whole lot more to say other than there's a whole lot of stuff in there. But as I said, a whole lot of stuff also tends to hide stuff. So let me hand it over to Simon to reveal some of the goodies that are in there.
Thank you very much, Volker. Hi, everyone, also from my side. And without any presentation slides and so on, we will jump directly into coding things and demo things. Let me get the video panel out of my way. Perfect. So we have prepared several different use cases, tips, and tricks for you today. Let's start maybe with our first application under test, which is our internal TypeScript application we use in wdi5 to test wdi5 itself. It's a basic UI5 freestyle application with some controls. We have navigations to the other side. We have a list and a smart table. Okay, that's the application we have for now. Let's go to our setup. We have already wdi5 configured here. Everything is installed. If you need to see how you can install it, have a look at the documentation or the session from Volker about from 0 to hero, where he will also show you the installation. Okay, let's start with maybe one first thing not everyone knows about. And this is the weird or maybe hidden interaction locator we have. Most of the time you don't need that, and probably some of you never have seen this interaction locator. And in most cases, you actually also don't need it because everything is handled in the background. For example, here we just want to identify the list on our detail page and check that the items, the amount of items equals to 9. We don't need this interaction locator for that yet. I will come to the explanation for that in a second. So the local web server has already started. I can execute the command npm wdi5 or wdi5 as configured in my package.json. It will open the detail page, wait till the UI5 application is loaded, and identify the list report and check that I have the correct amount of items. Great. Now, let's do the same thing, but now with the smart table. We have identified the sub and list. Let's try the same thing with the smart table. So we want to identify it and we want to check that the amount of items equals to 9. For that, of course, I will use the help of the test recorder because it's just a great help. I will move it to the right side, right click to the smart table and identify the smart table. I can copy the sample. Of course, we need to select the correct dialect. We don't want to use OPA5. And we can add another test here. Oh, Copilot is already helping me. Okay, we have identified the smart table. Now let's first of all try if we can do exactly the same on the smart table with, yeah, let's try to get the items from the smart table. For now, I will only execute this test, just that everything is executed a little bit faster, and run the tests again. The app is started again, and whoops, we have an issue. We expect that it has 9 items, but we received 2 items. Why is this? Let's have a look at the application again, and especially on the control tree we see here on the test recorder. Directly under the smart table are not the items located, but 2 other aggregations, overflow toolbar and table. So when we directly use smart table get items, we receive the amount of these 2 things. So it would be better to directly identify the internal table which is used, and under that we have our column list items. So let's do that instead of directly using the table. I think we don't need this binding path. It's just confusing. And let's rename this because this is not a smart table anymore. And let's try to run this again. And it failed again. And when we see on the right side, table get items is not a function. Okay, this is weird. And this is where our so-called interaction locator comes into hand. Because what happens in the background? The interaction locator can have several values. The default is the so-called auto mode. So if you don't define anything, auto is used. What is auto doing? Auto is trying to cascade some, he's trying several things. First of all, he's trying to use the so-called interaction, the interaction type press. What is meant by that? The selector does not only try to identify the table itself, but also an element which you could press. If he does not find that, he will go to the next one. This is focus. With focus, he will try to identify something on the table where we can have focus, like an input field, things like that. And if this is not matching, then he will try to use the last one. This is interaction root, and root is just using the root element of this control. Here again, I have written that here at the top, press, focus, root. For most of the cases, I would say 95%, you can ignore these press and focus interaction types because there are very limited real-world scenarios where you need that. But this root interaction type is really, really helpful because of this issue. Let's have a quick look in the terminal what he is currently identifying when we don't use this interaction type. So I just started a debug terminal and the test again. And the cool thing is we have the table here, we can expand it. We see it's a wdi5 control. Let's close the call stack. And we also can have a look at the DOM ID. And here we see, okay, he found a control, he found the UI5 table, but not directly the table. He found some kind of trigger. And this is because of our interaction auto mode. He first of all tried to find something where you could press on. And in this specific case, I'm not really sure what the trigger is, but he found that one. And of course, on this element, we cannot get some kind of items. So this is why it's failing. And if in this case, we can use this interaction root locator here as well. Let's try to run it again. Let's have a look again at the DOM ID, and tada, we see we directly get now the UI5 table, nothing else. And hopefully when we now run the tests, yeah, everything is fine. So for most of the cases, you will never need this interaction type. If you face some issues where you get a weird control you don't want, probably you can try to use this interaction root control to get really your DOM element you want, and you can work with that. Okay. Now we have one more special case with our interaction locator. We can not only have these 4 predefined values, but we can also manually append or add a so-called ID suffix. When do we need this? Here, down here, I have another test, and this is to understand the locator ID suffix for the interaction. What I have already prepared, we are going to the main page and we try to press on the date picker. So we are going to the main page and we press on the date picker. And if it is updated correctly, sometimes this control tree will not update. Let me quickly.
You're already on it. It's the date picker is already on.
Exactly, but I'm searching actually a different control, but he will not display it for me right now. Let me close the test recorder quickly and open it again. Ah, here it is now. We see here in the sub UI area, it's in a different one because it's a dialog. When we open the date picker, we get an internal calendar control, we get a header, and we get a month. Okay, we get the whole month, but this is not helping us to select now one dedicated date of this month. And here, this ID suffix handler is very helpful. And the test recorder is also helping you with that. So for example, I want to select the 23rd of October here. I can use press, and he will generate me a control selector, and we see now here in this interaction type, he will automatically add ID suffix and then 2024 1023. I can copy that now and say, okay, we have pressed on the date picker icon, and now we press on the specific date. As we can see, we only have the month control. We don't have something like day here at hand. But with the ID suffix, we can get even deeper through the DOM to identify this. If you don't use the test recorder, or sometimes the test recorder does not give you the correct ID suffix, how can you identify this? You can simply open your development tools and go through the DOM. My zoom bar is again in the way. I will try to identify one. And here we see it. Here we have the month control and also the ID suffix we manually can add. This is the one the test recorder automatically generated for us. And we see that for several values here. If you had a good look at our table example with the smart table where he identified some kind of trigger, this is nothing else as a different ID suffix you could manually add there. So also very helpful. And now let's try to run this test. And if everything works fine, he selects the correct date for us. So he has opened it. Now we go one step further. He has pressed on it and it's the correct date. And with just one little change, we can also select now a different date because we now have seen the structure of the ID suffix for this specific control. Of course, for different controls, you have different patterns, but we could now go to today, run this again, and he should have selected a different date. Okay, he has pressed on it and ta-da, just with one little change, we selected a completely different date on the date picker. Very handy. Okay, this was it about this interaction type. I hope you could now understand that for, yes, most cases you don't need it. If you face some issues, use the interaction root probably. And if you don't find the right control, maybe try to find in the DOM or with the help of the test recorder, the ID suffix.
Yeah, we see
Okay.
these a lot in the issues. There's every now and then an issue coming in for exactly that. So interaction root is also something that we haven't invented, but it actually comes from the wdi5 test library. So we're just reusing this and do not invent something special for it. So don't blame us. Blame wdi5. No, I'm just kidding. So this is where it stems from.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to the next topic, and this is a feature that is, let's say pretty new, and it came also, from an issue from the community. We in the beginning never thought about that, but that's the cool thing when people from the community use wdi5 and they have some very special issues we never thought about. We can have a look at that and then also implement new features. What am I talking now about? This is about long polling. What I'm now doing, I'm adding here an URL parameter. What this does when we go to my network tab is now that we fetch all the time some requests. In this case, we just fetch from the Northwind service the categories again and again. Some may have the scenario where they have one request which is loading very long and blocking things, or you have such long polling scenarios where you need to fetch data over and over again. And this is actually blocking wdi5 from the test execution. And I can also show you that. And for that, I go to the wdio conf.js and I will add to our base URL the same parameter so that the application is also started with these requests. And when we now look at it, it's loading the application, it has started, this looks right, but somehow nothing is happening. And now we can wait a little bit longer, and probably you already see it in the background. I will move it to the left. Oh, we have some error messages here. What are the error messages when we go up? Polling stopped because of the timeout of 15 milliseconds. There's still one OpenXHR request. So what is happening here? One of the biggest advantages of wdi5 is that we are synchronized with the UI5 framework. So we wait for you that the application is started, that CSS animations are done, and also that asynchronous work is done. So if you have still data loading, we wait for that, and only when everything is done, we say, okay, the UI5 application is in a stable state. Let's start with the test execution that we have stable tests. But because we have that, and we have this long polling here now implemented, this is blocking us from the test execution, and wdi5 is never really starting with the tests. For that, we have invented or implemented another option to the configuration file. When we go up here, we have our wdi5 object, and we have added a so-called ignore auto wait URLs. And here you have an array where you can just pass one string, multiple strings as you like, with paths which you want to exclude from this auto waiter. Of course, you have to be careful what you want to exclude, because it could make your tests more fragile if you just exclude more or less everything here. But we, for now, exclude our categories call, which is polling all the time. With that, I can start the tests again. And we see immediately the date picker is opened and is done. Cool. So we can also do that.
So
All
people
right,
might be interested how this is done. There's this auto waiter that also stems from the UI5 framework. Again, nothing we've done ourselves. And what we essentially did was pick this up, monkey patch it, and exclude exactly this pattern from the UI5 lifecycle await. So this is on the network level, on the application lifecycle sync level, and it should not affect any of your tests. You do not have to do any auto coding browser.pause or anything. Please only use the URLs you want to exclude from the waiting cycle, life cycle of the UI5 application.
exactly. Okay, now we will move on, and we will move on to a different application under test. And this is the shopping cart application. Probably a lot of you already know the shopping cart. It's just a demo application in a demo kit. I can quickly open it up. Quite a lot of you probably have seen it. And yeah, this is our next application on a test. And here we also have quite a good amount of, let's say, tests for first scenario predefined for you. And we not only have written some tests, we also did it with a page object pattern and so on. And this makes everything more readable, more maintainable, and more reusable. When we look at it, the scenario is that we select a category, a specific product of this category, we add it to the cart, open the cart, and we check that in the cart is one item, but not only one item, the correct item as well. We can quickly start this and see how wdi5 is executing this scenario. So he selects one specific product of the category. He should add it to the cart, open the cart, and check that the correct item is in the cart. Very cool. And when you have these page object patterns and you follow that, I think it's pretty readable and also very readable on the reporter. Now, I will add one more thing here. I will add that after he checked that the cart is correct, I want to select a different product. The cool thing is I have already, written all my page objects in a way that I can just reuse it. Product catalog page, I want to select a different product, and here I want to select now, for example, Beam Breaker B2. And after we have selected it, we want to check that it should be really selected, but not B2. This is the same one, B1. Okay, let's run this again. So the first steps should be exactly the same, but at the end, he should select now Beam Breaker B1 again. And we already see on the right side, there's something wrong. Let's have a quick look at it. No DOM element found using the Beam Breaker B1. He did not find it. And I'm not sure if you have seen it. The issue is that the screen resolution is too small, that it is displayed correctly. Do I have it still open? Here it is. I can do this manually again. Probably, first of all, a little bit larger. And this is a big case for all our responsive applications. Of course, all our UI5 applications are also responsive. When we have a large screen, everything is fine. All 3 columns are displayed. When we go a little bit smaller, or not that small, we see he can only display 2 things, and the left side is completely hidden. For our automated test, this is not very good, and we have to know about it. So the recommendation here is to put a fixed window size to your screens. How can you do that? We can go to our configuration file, to our capabilities. They are a little bit up. Here we say, okay, we define our Chrome browser, and here we can define in the arguments that we want to have a probably larger window size. Something like, yeah, almost full screen. Let's try to run it again, and we should see that the browser is now opened a little bit larger. And now he selected B1 and everything is great because we had a larger one. So if you write automated tests for your standard cases, stick to one screen resolution and work with that screen resolution. Of course, it could be also very good to maybe test how your app should behave with smaller screen resolutions, but you should know about that. This is very important, especially when you use the so-called headless mode. You can use that locally, but most of the time you probably use that in the CI environment. And when you start or use this headless argument, the browser per default even starts in a very small screen resolution, which is very problematic for our responsive applications. So I can, for example, remove this one again and only use headless. And of course, we would expect, hey, this is failing again. The screen resolution is too small. And in a headless mode, it's a little bit harder to really see what went wrong. And then it's, of course, handy to have screenshots. So we see the test is already running, but we don't see a browser popped up. This is because it's handled in headless mode. And now we see something has failed. How do we identify it? Or how could we get closer to the root cause? You could now manually use our screenshots we have in wdi5. I have stored them here under screenshots, and I could manually go through them and see what the issue is. And here, for example, where was the screenshot? Here, for example, we already see, the left side is not there because the resolution is too small. If you don't like to go manually through all your screenshots with browser.screenshot, you can of course also use different reporters that are available for standard WebDriver IO. For example, I have implemented here the so-called timeline service. Just look up the documentation about the timeline service and follow the implementation guide, and it works out of the box. And with the timeline reporter, for example, we have in the target folder, first of all, a lot of screenshots generated out of the box, but also an HTML file we can open. I will quickly open that, and then we get a little bit better overview. And we see he's collecting multiple screenshots in a semantic order. He's structuring that per it step in our describe or in our test. And he will also directly show us where it failed with some kind of error log. And here again, then we could see, probably this is the step where we should see a product, and it should probably be the beam breaker B1. We don't see it. And then we could come back to the root cause. And it's again then that we have a too small screen resolution. Okay. The last thing I want to mention here is, and this is in my from my point of view very important. Let's have a look at this I should see product function. This is an assertion. So we expect something. Yeah, we expect that a specific product was found, is initialized, that this is true. And I really I recommend to you that you write a lot and also meaningful assertions as much as possible. Why do I say that? Let's comment out this line here. Let's run the tests again. Again, it's a too small screen resolution, so the tests should fail. And we can have a look on the right side in a second. Some errors we will receive, but hey, our tests run successfully. 3 passed, but we see wdi5 is already telling us, hey, we couldn't find something, we couldn't press on it, there's something wrong. And what is very important to know here is when wdi5 has problems with identifying something, pressing on something, it will log these errors in the console or in the terminal, which is very good. What we will never do currently is that we stop the test execution of the it step when we have errors. This will only happen currently if our expect statements will fail. If this expect statement will fail, then this it step will fail. So that you don't write tests with some fragile tests or false positives, please always remember to write assertions and not only assert true, really meaningful assertions. I just added the line again, and now it should fail. Great, it's failing again, and it's exactly at our expect statement.
Strange that it's sometimes good, and we're looking forward to failing tests, right?
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, there's one question from Marian in the chat that I find quite meaningful. What is a good way to save those reports, aka screenshots or the timeline reporter results, in a pipeline like Piper or GitHub Action? Can you say something about that?
That's a very good question, and I don't have the best answer for that. In a CI environment, it's always a little bit tricky, and probably, Marian, you know that to access these screenshots. I don't have a clear answer for that yet. I'm not sure, Volker, if you know a good way.
Oh, it's been on the agenda for the longest time, along with also demoing visual regression testing. We've never done that. We use it internally, but we've never done that publicly. So this might be a good hint on that to combine the two. Then also a last note on why don't we break in the test when something's failing? It's a philosophical discussion. It came up also in the GitHub discussions, not only once, but quite frequently, since other frameworks are failing the tests once there's something erroring out to some extent. All I can say is we took that decision in the beginning, and for now we're sticking with it. It proved to be the right way for large test suites. It would certainly be more convenient for smaller test suites to immediately fail when something goes wrong in terms of locating a control or so. But for large test suites, this might break the overall flow too early. So just, we'll stick with it. That's all we can say for now, period.
Yeah. There could be maybe in the future some kind of strict mode, but per default, I think we will never enforce that, because you can also, with this behavior, test that certain controls are not found on the UI. Okay, the last thing I want to show you, and now we are switching again the application, and we are now switching to the CAP Bookshop wdi5 one. And the people who are watching that and had a look at this week's tutorials we can solve, this is exactly the tutorial you can solve this week about wdi5 and the CI integration. And here I want to show you the CAP authentication. I have here also already the test prepared with page objects, with specs. The flow is not so important right now. What we see here in the configuration file, again, in the capabilities, we have prepared the basic authentication because I enabled the basic auth locally for our CAP application. And if I now try to run that, we see we are stuck, and we are stuck at the basic authentication pop-up. That's weird because we have defined our predefined basic auth thing. Why is that? We have a special case here. The case is that when you have a deployed UI5 application with basic auth and so on, everything is working fine because you're authenticating directly against the UI5 application itself. When you use basic auth locally with CAP, you don't have to authenticate yourself against the application itself, but against the OData services which are available or which the app wants to use. And for that, we have implemented also something, and this is again a requirement or an issue that was raised from the community, and together with the people, we implemented something. And I think it's pretty cool. So we have our mandatory basic auth property here, and now we can have also an array, which is optional, where we say, okay, we don't want to authenticate ourselves against the base URL, which is defined in the configuration file. We want to authenticate ourselves against this OData service. And if you have multiple ones, you can put them also here. And first of all, we will then authenticate against all these different services, and then we will start the tests. Let's try this again. And I'm not sure, probably it was too fast for you, but for a brief second, we have seen the OData service. We authenticated against it, and after that, we opened the real app. And our tests run through. And here you see more or less, hopefully, the solution of the tutorial you will do this week, or probably you have already done it. Okay. These were, I would say, a lot of information. There is even more we could probably show you. There's even more in the documentation, but for this session, I would say it's enough. But one more thing I want to show you, because I'm very happy that I can show you that one. Let's have a look at the package JSON and our development dependencies. And for the people who will see it, I'm using already WebDriver.io version 9 with the wdi5 service 3.0 release candidate 0. So we finally achieved a first release candidate with for the WebDriver.io v9 support, and it is out now since this morning. So you can try this out, and probably you have also seen it while running these tests that per default the BTP protocol is now used. We see it here. So we don't use the WebDriver protocol per default anymore. We use the BTP protocol. It should give us a performance improvement. Unfortunately, not yet. We are not completely done with the WebDriver v9 support, but a first start. So for our early adopters who want to use it, the entity is already existing. You can try out this release candidate, and if you face any issues, please raise an issue, ping us. Yeah, we are not done yet.
Yeah, that's almost a good famous last words. We're not done yet. But in that case, it's true. The documentation is also missing specifically for how to migrate from version 2 to version 3. Why did we even choose a version 3? Obviously, because of the WebDriver v9 dependency. It should be a non-breaking change though. So the same as it was from version VDIO version 1, wdi5 version 1 to version 2. This should be similar now, version 2 to version 3. It's a non-breaking change. And the reason we can confidently say this is that we did not alter any tests to cater towards wdi5 in the wdi5 repository. It was a matter of reworking the wdi5 code to adhere to the new standards that come with v9, with VDIO or WDIO v9. So it looks as if it's a non-breaking change. Let's not exclude it completely, but it looks like that. And documentation is about to come. Some performance measurements is about to come. We all want to know ourselves what the BTP protocol actually gives us in terms of performance gain. And since then, or ever since then, we should be good to go with wdi5 version 3.
Great. And I think with that, we are done for today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. That was fantastic. Great interaction in the chat as well. So the closing words for me are not many. So we do have some awesome sessions coming up today. I'll put a link to the Oktoberfest events in the chat right now. So we have 3 more sessions coming up. And we have a validation tutorial as well for this one. And I'll put that in the chat as well. And that's all I have to say. So thanks so much, Simon and Volker, for being here, for being on this live stream, for doing it live, and for always helping out and pushing wdi5 forward. It's awesome. All right. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.